before we get into the salon itself proper, we wanted to just take a moment to acknowledge the horrific massacre that occurred in Atlanta. So just in a moment, we're going to invite everyone to a moment of silence for the victims. This was a really horrific hate crime. It was an act of domestic terrorism perpetrated by a white man. And this is the manifestation and the real threat and real impact of racism. What we are coming together to have a conversation about and in the fight for justice and equity. So thank you all for gathering with us, and we would love to just have a moment of silence for the victims. Thank you. I'm going to post in the chat a couple of shared resources. This is an amazing resource bank that I saw posted earlier today that has come together very quickly. It's a community resources guide. And if you are looking to make a donation, also there's a lot of resources in there. But the AAPI Community Fund has a fundraiser on GoFundMe, and I would definitely check that out as well. I've posted that in the chat. So, we are coming together here today to celebrate the efforts and the voices of these awesome current students who have led initiative to challenge their institutions to be held accountable. But what's really exciting about this for me is that they're going to tell us all about that in their own words. So what we're going to do now, Rodrigo and I will introduce ourselves as the producers of this salon and light moderators of the discussion. And then we're just going to pass it over to our awesome guests to introduce themselves and their organizations. Then we'll have a little roundtable conversation and an opportunity to answer some questions and ask and answer some questions. So with that, I will introduce myself. My name is Kate Freer. I use she, her pronouns. I am zooming in from Lenape-Hoking, the stolen ancestral homelands of the Lenape peoples, known in colonized terms as Sunset Park, Brooklyn. I am a multimedia artist, a filmmaker, an educator, and an organizer. I am a member of Wingspace as well, and I'm so thrilled to be here with you all. I will pass it over to Rodrigo.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rodrigo Hernandez Martinez. I use he, him pronouns. I'm currently coming from Lenape land, also known in colonial terms as Queens, New York. I'm also a member of Wingspace, co-producing this salon, and I'm a scenic and costume designer and a retail worker right now. And yeah, and I'll pass this to Elizabeth.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Barrett. I am a video and scenic design MFA student currently studying at UCSD. I'm coming to you from the lands of the Kumeyaay people, also known as La Jolla, California. And I use they, she pronouns, and I will pass it on to Natalia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natalia Quintero Riestra. I also go by QR. My pronouns are she and her. I am coming to you from the land of the Kumeyaay, which is also known as La Jolla, California. And I am a second-year MFA acting student at the University of California, San Diego, alongside Elizabeth. And I will pass it to Danny.
Hi, my name is Danny Borba. I use he, him pronouns. I'm coming to you from the land of the Shoshone, Goshu, and Ute tribes, also known as Salt Lake City, Utah. So a little bit off there. um, I'm a acting student in the BFA program at the University of Utah. Yeah, and I will pass it along to Aisha.
Hi, my name is Aisha Hamida. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a third-year student at Ithaca College and a theater production and design major with a concentration in props and scenic art. And I am on the ancestral lands of the Haudenosaunee, known in colonial terms as Ithaca, New York. I will pass this on to David. Sorry.
Hi, my name is David Aravalo, and I'm a third-year MFA costume designer at Northwestern University. And I'm joining you today from the traditional homelands of the people of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, the Potawatomi, and Odawa, as well as the Menominee, Miami, and Ho-Chunk nations, also known as Chicago and Evanston, Illinois. And I will pass it to Ronnie.
Hi everyone, my name is Ronnie Shorey. My pronouns are she, her. I'm currently joining in from the land of the Kish Nation in Orange County, California. I represent CSUF Taust. I am a fourth-year theater arts major. And is there anybody else?
I think that's it.
That's
yeah.
it. Okay.
Great. So we'll just go in that same order, and just so everybody knows, we're asking each of the student representatives to talk a little bit about who's involved in their group, why they came together, and what motivated their action, what are some of the goals of the group, and what actually has been done since whatever action. So we'll start with our representative from UCSD. And when you're done, you may pass it along.
Okay. Me and QR will pass it back and forth.
Yes, exactly.
I can start us off and kind of explain how our group kind of formed. We kind of started formalizing it in the summer of like around August 2020. After the protests, after the murder of George Floyd, but it was kind of something that was a long time coming. There was a craving and a desire for more student representation and decision making, whether that was in season planning, curriculum, and just kind of communication between faculty, staff, all of us all together. And so it was something that kind of the groundwork for it had been laid and students requesting it. And so when this all happened, we kind of decided to form a work group.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary of what were the other kind of like leading questions?
Oh yeah, I'll stick those in the chat as well. So you covered who's involved and what motivated the action, but the goals of your group and what has actually been done in response.
Okay, great. So I think that the main goal of our group was realizing that as students, we're a lot stronger together. I think like individual voices popping up and saying things is powerful and important. But I think we were having other issues in our department, and we realized that there was a whole other section of EDI that needed its own attention. So we kind of created a group that was dedicated to just pushing forward with those specific issues. And our goal is really to be the accountability force for our faculty, staff, admin, and also the campus as a whole, because as students, we kind of cycle out. We're only there maybe, especially as MFA students, we're maybe there 2 or 3 years, but the people actually needing to do the work are the administrators, the faculty, the staff that'll be there for years to come. So we're kind of the driving force behind, and also kind of the student representatives to be like, people know to find us, and we already have a strong relationship with faculty, kind of like faculty ally who are also fighting for the same thing. So it helps make an easier communication between students as a whole, when we have a lot of them, with the faculty who have the power to actually make these changes. And there's many more that need to be made, but this, like the system that we have created has seemed like very effective, and we've already been able to accomplish a lot of the things that people have been asking for in a very short amount of time. A year in academic terms, it's a very short amount of time. Elizabeth, I think you had like a really great list of things that we had done.
Some things one of the first things we were doing is starting to kind of form databases of information, resources, trainings, also reaching out to wider campus. I don't know if this is just our campus or if it is a lot of other people feel this way as well, but there's a form of isolation since we get so involved in all of our theatrical productions and doing all the work we do, because it consumes us. But there are so many outside resources, outside communities, outside kind of organizations that a lot of our students don't know about. So I think a lot of the work that we try to do is trying to get that information accessible to theater and dance students. We also, we work alongside our faculty. We meet with them twice a month and we kind of discuss things that are happening in our department. We work, there's like a faculty EDI work group as well. And so we're able to kind of keep communication between students and faculty. We also are hoping to do more of this, and we've done it, starting to hold open spaces when things happen, like whether they're large things like what happened at the Capitol or the shooting that just happened, kind of just holding open spaces for our community to gather and being there to act as like moderators and make sure that there is kind of a space for dialogue if people need it. Yeah.
Anything else to add?
I will say one thing for going back to who is involved. I think one thing that helps is we do have representation from undergrads as well as grad students. We try to have an equal number, and we also have some representation from a PhD student who's part of our group, and we try to have representation from all the different departments, since a lot of us are, again, kind of siloed within our own departments, and so it is much easier to bring about change if we understand what everyone is going through.
Yeah, and on top of that, we noticed that a big thing, and I don't know if any of you have had this struggle too of kind of conflating like communication issues with EDI issues. At least especially now in the Zoomverse of the only way we can communicate with each other is through email or some form of communication. So having somebody from each kind of department or like section really helps us spread through word of mouth when we have meetings, and also help gain support when something happens in one department. Normally people wouldn't hear about it, but now other sections do. So we are like, we know that happened, and you have support not just like in the design department, but also acting is on top of it, stage management is on top of it. It helps organizing become a lot easier. I think that's it.
Thank you so much. Support for all of that. Cool. Next up, I'm going to pass it over to Danny.
Thank y'all. That was just great to hear how that started and everything like that. I guess I am one of the founding members of BIPOC.AA, otherwise known as BIPOC Artists for Awareness, and kind of similar to what Elizabeth and Natalia were saying, but you know, the murder of George Floyd happened, and as that happened and it got more into the entertainment business about the different things that just transpire in the business, whether they be racist, intentional or not intentional, we started getting into the education systems, right? We started noticing that there was problems with the education system, and a friend of mine, after the We See You White American Theater, after they sent out a list of demands, you know, me and my friend and a couple other friends, we decided, you know what, we need to do our own thing, because as much as the We See You White American Theater is amazing, it almost felt as if this was for the big general theater, not for our local theater, not for our regional, not for our Utah theater. And we saw that within our own allies, and I guess just different people that we work with, putting stuff up on their social medias and all these different things, almost as saying we're not racist, we can't be racist, we are supporting. Meanwhile, all of our BIPOC students especially we had been going through a lot of racist, whether they were intentional or not, but a lot of racist things. And I bet y'all had experiences like this too. So what we decided to do was first to show that there have been instances. So we set up an Instagram account, BIPOC.AA. And what we decided to do was it would be anonymous to any student who had issues or experiences in the past or in the current situation that it was, to submit a story, to submit a story and see, what are the instances that we see or that we experience as BIPOC students. And we got so many different kind of responses. It was either from the macro versus the micro level. It was the most subtle. It was just different things, right? It was with casting, with interactions with teachers, all these different things. And we just saw this rise. And so as our community of BIPOC students became bigger, we decided, you know what, we're gonna send our own demand, or our own demand list. And so we came up with a list of demands, not knowing whether or not there would be answers or if there are solutions. This is especially in the beginning of all of this. So it was like, we're just gonna do it because this is our reality. And we sent that out, and our department responded, but they responded in a very subtle, very like, yeah, we hear you. I'm sorry. We're gonna do better. And our community was like, great, but this is nothing. Like, we want action. We want actual things. And so we had to go to the media and ask newspapers and different things like that to write about this, because it was almost as if they were just like swiping it under the rug, kind of. And so we were like, we're not gonna take that. And so that happened. The news took charge of it, and we actually had a little bit more traction. We're still in the process. I mean, a lot can change, but not a lot can change in 1 year. And so we're just continuously going. It's basically our goals are, trying to create a community and a space for BIPOC artists specifically, but just for any marginalized group, to feel like they have a space in our theater world, which is a little bit different just because it's like Utah theater is not necessarily the most right, but like just want to create a future that is inclusive to them, and to let them know that they have a space, that they have a community. And I mean, I'm a junior, and so it's not like I'm gonna be here for the lasting effects if there is any, but I know that me and a lot of my other friends, we just want to make sure that hopefully is in the future for future students. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything left in questions, but that's basically it.
Great. Thank you so much, Danny. And I started dropping in some of the Instagrams into the chat as well if you want to check those out. Over to, I believe, Aisha. Are you next? Yeah.
Hi, I'm gonna give a huge shout out to Ithaca Theatre Arts by POC page, founded by Catherine Allison, Hannah Rose, Maggie Thompson, Donovan Lockett. Just these amazing people who started this community at our campus, trying to uplift the voices of our community and holding our faculty and fellow peers accountable. The community is made up of alumni and current BIPOC students. A letter full of demands was sent out July 31st, 2020. So again, after kind of the George Floyd, Breonna Taylor incidents, where there was truly like a demand for something to be said. This letter was sent out to the president, the provost, a bunch of other people at Ithaca College, and we wanted to make sure the demands of our community were met and the experiences of our community were heard and validated and honored. Many of those demands since July 31st were met, but of course there's still so much work to be done. And I'm so happy that, these people started this movement on our campus and in our department.
Thank you. And I believe, oh my gosh, I lost my list of who is next, but David, is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for hosting this. And I just also want to say thank you for these, I don't know, I'm just so amazed by my colleagues here, hearing all of your stories. I'm so impressed and amazed. And it's really inspiring for me. So I wanted to acknowledge, first of all, that like I said, I'm a graduate student, and my part of the inspiration for our organizing at Northwestern really was the graduate theater department organizing really was the work of the undergraduate population at Northwestern. And these undergraduates, thank God for the undergraduates, because you are really raising the bar for all of us and keeping us accountable. And I can't shout out enough to all of you for your work. Northwestern is not a really hospitable environment for student protest and for student organizing historically. Just over the summer, I want to acknowledge some of the student organizing that happened. There's a group called NU Community Not Cops that has worked toward abolition of the NU Police Department. And during one of their protests, they did go to Morton Shapiro, the president of Northwestern University's home, as part of the protest. And one of the things that they were chanting, of course, were pigs. That's one of the things that was chanted. And later, Morton Shapiro wrote a really huge community email that he sent to the entire Northwestern student body, faculty, and community, where he implied that the students were anti-Semitic for chanting pigs, because he identifies he's a Jewish man, and he took that as a personal attack on him as a Jewish man. It's that kind of attitude and reframing of student organizing and student labor that I think has led to a real lack of student organizing at Northwestern. So about a year ago, I would say, really, our catalyst was actually, I would say, this pandemic and our move when we had to move to online only. It was a week or so after Breonna Taylor was murdered. So there was that kind of horrifying convergence of things. And what we were shocked by was just a disconnect from our faculty. It seemed like they were disengaging from both situations and both scenarios. Like, not only were they disengaging from, this is different, we can't learn the same way, they were also disengaging from the fact that we feel like we have to respond to this moment artistically or emotionally, that there's something different now, and we were not feeling supported in that moment. I think there was a feeling that the faculty were interested in keeping things as normal as possible, because they had a hope that things were going to return to normal as soon as possible. So they weren't responding to emails. It was just, we were met with a lot of silence. And it was around the same time that I found a document called White Supremacy Culture in Organizations that was released by the Center for Community Organizations in Quebec. And this document really blew my mind, because I read it and I actually said to my colleagues, like, this document could have been used to build this university. That's the way it feels. Some of the characteristics that are listed as characteristics of white supremacist organizations are power hoarding, paternalism, defensiveness, right to comfort, and fear of open conflict. These are all things that we as students experienced during our efforts, our early efforts, and our continued efforts to organize and discuss with our faculty. So acknowledging that we existed and we're trying to learn in a white supremacist culture really became a framework for how we were going to organize. One of the things that I would say for me personally has been very important is acknowledging that there's just a very clear lack of diversity within not only the faculty, but also within the student body. I'll speak as a designer myself. We've never had a Black costume designer in the history of this program. We have never had a Black lighting designer in this history of this program. There was one Black scenic designer in the 1980s. That was the last time we had Black students in the MFA design program. Our faculty are 5 white faculty, 1 biracial faculty member, and it's these faculty who are solely responsible for admissions into the graduate program. They have no outside oversight, and also they don't receive any kind of EDI, implicit bias training, as part of their work at Northwestern University. It's not required at all as part of their work. So all of these things were what brought us together. Not just, that's what I wanted to acknowledge, is that it was not just Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and the diversity, the lack of diversity within the program. It was also just this moment had felt like something we had never encountered before. So we decided to organize with the goals that we wanted to create community across departments, because like my colleagues have mentioned, we felt very siloed, which I think was actually, we discovered a tactic by our faculty was to keep us very separate. And part of us, some of us would receive different information at different times and it wouldn't be shared, which was a really bizarre thing that we learned. We wanted to create an environment for open and frequent communication between students and faculty. We wanted to work toward, we want to advocate for financial equity across areas, because we fortunately are here on a stipend, but all of our areas are not equitably paid. So some of us receive 1/3 of the full stipend that others receive across the areas in our department, which is absurd. We wanted to, of course, advocate for increased diversity within the MFA student body. And we also wanted to advocate for EDI training that included both the faculty and the students, because that's something that doesn't exist at all on campus. What we've been able to accomplish in this time, we do have bi-weekly meetings of our little organization, the little organization that could. We've held the first ever all department student town halls. So this is where, like our colleagues are saying, we just bring the entire student body together to talk openly, share. We try to make it a space where you share both positive and negative, share your concerns, and also what are the good things that are happening within the program and within the department. We actually, our student organization organized the first ever EDI training session within the department during the fall quarter. We coordinated with NU's resources because they exist, they're here, they have an $11 billion endowment. So we tried to take advantage of that. It was attended by 45 students, and actually some of our faculty asked to attend, and then it became a weird thing because some of the faculty were jealous that others got invited and some didn't, so that's kind of funny. And we also began producing a quarterly state of the department document, which is just something that we thought would be a way to track not only our progress, but also the progress of the department. Something that could hold us all accountable for our work. So that's what we've been up to.
Oh, thank you so much, David. And I believe it's just over to Ronnie to close us out for this session.
Wow. Yeah. This is just so crazy being able to speak with all of you guys, because I know I'm the social media coordinator for CSUF Taos, and I've reposted some of BIPOC Artists for Awareness, some of their posts, it's just kind of crazy being able to speak to everyone face to face now. So I'm really appreciative of being able to be here. I our story, so we are CSUF Theatre Artists Union for Student Equity and Diversity. We came together because, similar to everyone else, the protests, everything that was happening, Black Lives Matter, we were angry as students, as people, you know, we felt the pain, we felt the hurt. And my department had posted one of the black squares that everyone seemed to be posting, you know, and at the time I was coming out of my BFA program, I had left that program. I was feeling a lot of pain from that and a lot of racial pain and mental trauma from that. And to see the department kind of post this display of performative activism when I and the only other person of color in my acting program, we had gone through so much racial trauma before we'd even gotten into the program, and to see them post this and not even acknowledge Black Lives Matter, it was a catalyst for us and several other people to start responding back. And so we started posting on, there's also other people had posted on the Instagram page too, commenting, kind of calling the department out. And so we started commenting, calling the department out, saying that they need to do better with actual displays of support. They need to be genuine, and when they say they want representation, they have to actually advocate for it. And so after that, we started kind of seeing a little bit of traction and started noticing that there was other students that were feeling the same way. So we started to gather and kind of group, and it was just the four of us. It was me, Sabrina Lopez, Leslie Aguirre, and Zion Pham were the founders of TAUST. And so we started trying to come up with a way for us to talk with more students and to kind of learn more about, you know, other people's experiences, because at that time, it kind of felt like it was just the four of us that had something that we needed to hear more of. We only felt like it was just us experiencing these things. And I knew that, you know, I can't be the only one. We can't be the only ones. There has to be other things happening if what we're experiencing, these macroaggressions, are so rampant just between the four of us. So we started organizing a forum, kind of just addressing or asking students, you know, to feel comfortable to address anything that they'd experienced and to just air it out. It was only open to students. We didn't want any faculty to be there to make anybody feel uncomfortable. And we had a really big turnout. It was bigger than I was expecting. But that kind of validation was what we needed to be like, okay, there's a lot of problems here. There's a lot more than we had ever realized. And so from that, we kind of started organizing more, started to talk to more people, reaching out to different faculty members that we felt like we could trust, or staff members that we felt like would be on our side. And we started organizing our group, kind of heading more in the direction of like an organized club instead of just a union or something on the side. And from there, we started kind of trying to figure out what we wanted this group to look like, because we felt we had different options. You know, we could be loud and disruptive, or we could kind of go a different way, try to be more formal, establish more direct relationships with the faculty. And since then, it's been very difficult. We've kind of noticed that the performative activism that we saw back in the summer, that's how the department runs. They will say one thing to protect somebody or to protect themselves, but then when we're in meetings with them, just completely disregard what we're saying, or just completely have their preconceived notions of what we're trying to say already. So they don't really want to listen to us anymore. But we have had a lot of really genuine, valuable discussion. We've started to have a culture of accountability, which is one of the goals that we were working towards. So there's been more students that have been able to come to us and say, hey, this happened, what do I do about it? And now, because we've been able to reach out to all these resources, we have an extensive list of resources to offer these students and show them, if you need help, if you want to report somebody, this is what you do, and we'll be here to guide you. You know, we have a lot of support. Especially I want to shout out Heather Denier. She's been so amazing. She's been able to organize the Representation, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and that's comprised of faculty members. So they're able to meet and speak about direct student issues, and we didn't have that. And that's something that, you know, we obviously need to have that type of accountability within the department. But there's still a lot of work. Until we see policy change, we won't see any actual change. And that's something that we're starting to learn we have to be more direct about and have to be louder about, because our approach didn't work. They were silencing us, and that's not what we want. We want to be heard, we want to be expressed, and we want people to actually understand that our problems as students are real and they need to be acknowledged. We've also, I also want to say that we were able to get students on the place selection committee, which is something that we've always wanted. There's still some issues with that, of course. There's always going to be pushback, but that has been, I think, a step, at least a good step in the right direction. But yeah, that's our story.
Thank you. It's been great listening to that. And from hearing to like what you're saying, all of your movements have started during the summer last year. And I'm interested to know how it has evolved, because the factors that we had last summer felt so unique. The fact that like besides obviously the protests seemed to be like a catalyst, but the fact that we were in that main shutdown, schools were shut down, which felt like their responses was lower. There was a media silence from schools, but everyone was on social media at home looking at their devices, right? So it seems like you were using social media as a tool for communicating that. And there was also this like lack, I don't know, there wasn't this structure of being in school and a fear of being expelled, being put on probation. Like there was all of these factors that it seemed like helped to push the movement forward. So I'm curious to hear how the movement has evolved now. Seems like a lot of people are back in school in some way or another. How has the movement adapted to the circumstances now versus the summer? And what have you encountered with that?
Go ahead, Danny. And you all can just unsilence us.
Cool. I think one thing that's been mentioned, like Ronnie mentioned it a little bit, and then it's been mentioned by a lot of my different colleagues right here. But like one of the huge things I think that really has changed is like a connection to one another. I know that for me, I know that for my friends and stuff like that, it was almost like we didn't want to say anything about anything that was happening in the department because we felt alone, or we felt like this is a one-time thing, this is a small thing, we don't want to raise an issue, just all these different things. But with all these different things that happen with the organizations that, you know, all these students are talking about, how they started and how there was even more communication, even things like this, more panels on students bringing up these issues, which I like completely am thankful for. Just things like these show us that we're not alone, and it shows us that we can't be silent we can't be silent about this anymore. As tough as it is sometimes, because it does get tough and it does get a lot of like work and everything like that, but as tough as it is, we've gotten to the point where we can't move back, because if we move back, then all the progress that we have been doing, even if it's a little, even if it's seems like nothing or whatever, right? Like we can't lose that. And so I think for me, one of the huge things is having those connections to, number one, students on my own campus, as well as alumni and past faculty who have gone through different things that the my department has just been putting us in, as well as communication and connection with all these different great organizations and awesome people. It like really does show that there is support, and there it is wrong what we go through. It is wrong, and it's not something that we should stand for. As much as there is this we talk a lot about this power dynamic that happens between department and student, and professor and student, all these things. As much as that is there, the power is not how it is attributed to the department or to the professor. The power is with the students. As and just this communication, this connection with all these other students that have gone past and present and maybe future. Like all these students, they really just put the perspective of what we're doing is not just a singular thing, but a whole huge thing. So I know that that is one thing that like has changed. That having that communication, having that connection, really just propels us forward. But yeah.
I was going to say that for us, one thing that has been really evolving, especially in this new year, is that we're recognizing that we need to move from a year ago when we got started. We were responding to an emergency, and now that we are moving away from an emergency, how do we move toward sustainability in our efforts? Because we cannot be in a state of emergency all the time, because it's exhausting. We don't get paid for this shit. And it's a lot of work. So how do we do that? Because we want to ensure that this work continues when we're gone also. That's what we're trying to do right now, is lay groundwork, I think, so that this continues after we're gone. And also, I think for us, in terms of shifting from emergency to sustainability, I'm really amazed and impressed by how many of you have talked about the successful collaborations with your faculty, because a year on, we really have had no successful collaborations with our faculty. And we have decided to just shift completely to, originally we thought that we could engage in some way, that would be one of the central goals. But in reality, that's become like our last goal. And we have shifted to, how do we serve each other, actually? Because if we're not getting what we need from our faculty and they're not interested in engaging, well then how do we produce that for ourselves, and how do we create the environment that we need for ourselves? So those are the things that's how it's evolving. And it's such a great question, because I do think it is evolving, and it has to evolve.
Yeah, I want to quickly piggyback on that you brought up two like huge major things. The first one I kind of want to talk about is, I mean, like the answer to the first question of how is it different? Yeah, we're no longer in a state of emergency. There's no longer like an explosion. And now it feels like I'm copying pasting an article that I read that was fantastic, called "What Does It Mean to Be a Woman of Color and in Leadership?" And in it, they talk about how right now it's so much work, but we want to get to a point where white supremacy is no longer the system in place in our universities and in our programs, but it is as simple and as regular and as insidious. Like anti-racism is as strong as what white supremacy is now in our institutions, right? And that takes time, and that takes a lot of work, and most of all, that takes taking care of ourselves. So working in little bits might get frustrating sometimes, but that is definitely something that I've noticed that has changed. It's really laying groundwork and systems. They're not very pretty. They're not the stuff that you put on Instagram, like, look at what we're doing. But it's like creating systems in our rehearsal rooms where people know the one person that they can go to that will listen, and making sure that we have students in our season planning committee, and that is a thing that is just becomes a thing. It just is something that students don't have to worry about anymore. Faculty is just like, oh, that's just a thing that we do. Cool, we're going to keep doing that. And like slowly adding ingredients into the stew when people are looking, or maybe when people are not looking. We kind of like to do that too sometimes. It's like, oh, that's a thing now? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And it will continue being a thing. And the other one, which might not be necessarily EDI work group related, but definitely something I was thinking about, is what do we do at a student level when faculty or staff or administration are not moving at the pace we want it to? That's something that I, as somebody that is interested also in producing, I noticed that season planning is literally like the Hunger Games in some situations. I'm sure in other universities as well, where it's like, everyone's looking for like, what does this department need? What does this department need? What does this department need? And in many cases, especially in our university, our undergrad population is so vast and very diverse. And I feel like so many of them do not feel seen or heard or experienced fully, and not just as their label, like for example, like Latinx, but like, what does it mean to be Chicanx Peruvian or Korean Japanese, and that there's so much nuance that needs to be had. And will we ever get there by the time that you graduate? I don't know. So something I individually did was like, I started a theater company in which that's literally the whole purpose. And I think that that's something that students can easily do. As we organize, we can also create our own theater companies, our own do our own productions. And it might be a smaller scale, but it's food for the soul, and gives people the opportunity to be seen, not just put on play pretend, but just really be experienced for who they are and play somebody that they can identify with. And I didn't do that with any faculty help. Elizabeth is also part of my theater company, LOL. But that was something that I'm like, this is really great work, but I want to take it an extra step to where I want students to genuinely feel the change that I wanted to make. So let me do that for them. So that's another way, I think, too. And that's something that's happening in our industry as well. People realizing that, why are we trying to fit ourselves into predominantly white institutions when we can create spaces of our own and not try to fit ourselves in, but just make a foundation and put our feet in and make it grow. So that's kind of on our end. I don't know if you want to add anything, Elizabeth.
Worded that so beautifully. I agree. I think there's like two levels of working, right? Working within the kind of bureaucracy and systems of a school that often works quite slowly because of all the different things it goes through. For that kind of work, it's about setting up kind of clear guidelines for students so that going forward, students that do get involved know what is expected of them, and that hopefully most of the work is on faculty and staff who are working, and then students are there to kind of express and help represent the student body. But that setting up those kind of strong systems takes a long time. But I think it is really just amazing that we can also then create our own spaces, and that those are space. If we are not given places to grow, then we can find other places to grow. We will build our own forest. We will do what we need to do. So yeah, I'm just impressed hearing about all the students that are working kind of even outside of a faculty. If you're not receiving support, then we support each other.
I just wanted to ask something. I wanted to know what kind of, like, I guess, backlash or pushback y'all have maybe seen, or just different things like that, and what y'all have been doing to either take care of each other or push back against that backlash. Just because I know that in our department we've had some stuff, and so I just wanted to know if, like, what y'all were go through, or what y'all have experienced.
Yeah, just to jump in. Yeah, we started noticing right away that the faculty were not welcoming of us, that they didn't want to hear us, that they didn't want understand what we had to say. And that's been really difficult because, you know, we're all undergrads. We're all trying to get through this and go to class, do jobs, like survive this pandemic, going through all this, and then fighting against the system of white supremacy and patriarchy that is so ingrained at our school. And it's been really difficult to try to kind of cope with that. But I think a way that we've dealt with pushback is just be transparent with people, be transparent with what this pushback means to us, why it's wrong. And we've been trying to be more transparent with the students, with the audience that we've garnered through our Instagram account. And a lot of it too is we've been kind of trying to give back to the students a bit more and establish more connections with alumni circuits, and outside resources to try to come in and also place accountability on the department. So I think finding support outside of the school, within the community, within the communities that, like the broad communities throughout the country, that's been really helpful, because when we couldn't find support within just like 6 or 8 of us at the time, we felt we had nowhere else to go or no one else to talk to. So we had to branch out, and kind of what you guys did with going to media outlets and stuff like that, just finding support and places to boost what you have to say without relying on the strength of the faculty or whoever you're up against. So that's kind of what we've been fighting against right now.
No, and I just want to like give a little bit more background to my question. It's just so fall of 2020, like fall of 2020, it was actually really nice to see, because we had conversations with professors, we had conversations with the head of the department and everything. It was really nice to see some of the syllabus changes, or even inclusion of, oh, here's some reading material if you're interested about this, Black Acting Methods book, or just different stuff like that. But it got to the point where in January they were doing a workshop of a chorus line, and that was the show that we were gonna do, but because of COVID they canceled it, and thank God, because they had actually cashed like horribly that show, and I won't even go into that because that's more in the past. I don't want to even touch that. But they did this workshop for the seniors that were going to graduate, and one of the characters, Connie Wong, it is professionally included that she can be changed for a short woman, right? But because that character specifically, we had discussed like what having actually Asian American students and then not casting an Asian American student to be a part of it and everything like that. We had those conversations, but in that workshop they cast a white woman, a white short woman, and then also we were going to do Songs for a New World, and the song Steam Train came up, just because we don't have a lot of, and sorry if I'm going too deep into the details and stuff, but Steam Train, they were wanting to have that be focused on a kid from an urban environment, specifically a black kid. They were like, yeah, we want to make sure that we give this representation and everything like that. And honestly, it wasn't necessarily the worst, but the thing is, we don't have any black students in our cast or in our like department. What they were gonna have was 4 white students take on the role and sing about a black kid, and so we not even the BIPOC students, but white students came up and they were like, hey, we're uncomfortable. We had a conversation. We told them, hey, either hire another black actor to be a part of the show, not just for the song but for the show, or focus on a different minority, that we have plenty of students from here, or just different things like that, right? They told us that they would work on it and that we'd get back to it. We had rehearsed the whole show in its entirety. We're 2 weeks away, and they canceled the show because of this song. I'm not saying that decision's wrong, but like not hearing these things, it pissed me off. Like, not to get too personal, but it really just it hurt, because it was like they're not focusing truly on what we're saying. and this pain of even choosing this song or choosing this show was like it could have been prevented. And I'm just saying that like a lot of these things, they're more subtle. They're more like, oh yeah, we are understanding, we are very perceptive, but then when it gets down to the dirty, it's like, yeah, no, we're not gonna, or do I have to, or I'm so sorry, but then we have this, and it's like all these different excuses and all these different things where it's like it's it feels like it's deeper than just an apology or one policy change. So that's why I asked that question.
Danny, for us, what we didn't, it wasn't so interesting backlash. I would say that the response from the faculty in the very beginning was just a lot of like gaslighting is what I would say. A lot of gaslighting and a lot of refusal to take accountability would be my biggest description of what it was. It was just a literally like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you mean. I didn't do that. We didn't do that. That was the original response. And then I think after we some time, our organization trying to do this work, like I said, there's really just been a disconnect, like a total disconnect and disengagement on the part of the faculty. So they went, like, for example, I mentioned the state of the department thing that we worked very hard on this document, and we sent it out, and all of us, all my peers were all very excited, not just my colleagues on our little in our organization, but also my colleagues in the department. And we sent it in the morning, and we're like, it was like that episode of Michael's The Office. I don't know if anybody remembers, where Michael Scott like sends his movie to corporate, and he's like, they're probably going to watch it right now. They're going to call right now. And so we were like, they're going to email really quick, guys. It's going to be a lot. And not a single faculty person responded. Not a single faculty person responded to our work. Never. And actually, we asked, we have never received a response. And when we asked about it, didn't you have anything to say? The response was, what did you want us to say to that? What were we supposed to say to that? So that, because we were faced with that, so yes, literally anything, literally thank you for the email would have been something. I mean, even that. But anyway, to answer your other question, like, that is what has led to this increased focus on, like you said, caring for ourselves then. So finding ways to boost our own voices and care for each other. So one thing that we're also trying to do is amplify the work done by some of our peers. So for the first time, we have affinity groups within our department. They just formed the first Black Artist Affinity Group, and we are trying to use our platform and like our state of the department to amplify that work done by our colleagues and to celebrate that work. And to celebrate, we have a brand new dean who is Dean E. Patrick Johnson, the new dean of the School of Communication at Northwestern, who is a Black man who, if I can say very honestly, I think a lot of the faculty were like, he's going to fix everything. He's going to come in and fix everything, which he's doing a lot. He's thank God he's doing a lot. And we're going to try to amplify the work that Dean E. Patrick Johnson has had, because in his like 7 months of tenure, he's had so many listening sessions with students from marginalized groups, individually, one-on-one, sitting with us, listening to us for the first time, things that our faculty have never done in their entire tenure at this university. So I think we're just shifting to care for ourselves. We're shifting to recognize our work and to better recognize our work and to congratulate each other on the things that we're doing.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for sharing all of that. And the question about like how to care for yourselves and each other during this time, because it is like very exhausting with compounded in the time that we're in now with all of this remote engagement. Just like, anyway, so tips for how you're taking care of each other and yourselves are super welcome and encouraged. You can put them in the chat and such. I did want to put another question into the space and like touch a little bit on some of the things that I have heard that you all mentioned, like specifically that I believe all of you are at these organizations, these institutions that are all predominantly white institutions that are all built on this foundation of, you know, the dominant culture of genocide and erasure in the United States, are all, you know, geared at a very particular brand of success, are all capitalist organizations. And you are in those spaces trying to be artists. Trying to learn and build community as artists. And often I have found in this fight for equity and justice, there is, it's really easy to compartmentalize, right, the activism and advocacy and the artistry. I know in my life, those are like intricately connected. I can't separate them in the work that I do, but often it feels like that way. But working inside of a theater program, trying to be artists, trying to advocate for yourself. I am curious, like, why is this important for all of you, right? Why does it matter to have anti-racist, anti-oppressive theater education, like on a personal level and also like a communal level? Small question.
For me, it's important because I don't know how to survive in not that a setting that is anti-racist. Even when it comes to things like economics, the extreme competitive nature of what we do, how easy and quick we are to tear each other down to try to succeed. This mentality of there's a table and there's only a couple seats, especially for minority groups, right? There's only one representation. That pits us against each other immediately, right? You're like, I need to be the best this, I need to be this, I can be the only, you know, like if the scarcity mindset that is so prevalent in American theater just needs to go in order for us to live, like to have, for me personally, to have a life that I feel is fulfilled by doing theater. If I cannot find or create these groups, I don't know if I can continue being in theater because I can't keep tearing other people down and I can't keep like starving myself to try to make it work.
Yeah, I'd also add, I mean, besides validating our own lived experience, right, and validating us as artists, I will acknowledge that part of my hope, I have plenty of marvelous white colleagues, and this work creating these programs that are anti-racist is also it's transformative for all of us. It's transformative for my colleagues also. This education is important. You know, how do we tell stories that are not our lived experience? What is the best practice for approaching works that are not part of our lived experience? Acknowledging that that is a question that should be asked, acknowledging that my white colleague should say, how do I do this the best way? That's a fundamental and important question that I think we're just broaching for the first time. And for me, that's very, very important. Again, it's like transformative for not just me and my BIPOC colleagues here, but also for my white colleagues.
And I just want to add, like, there's this perspective almost that I've heard a couple of times where it's like, yeah, we want BIPOC students at our school. It's just there isn't any that we see or that we try to find, but there isn't any. And that also can go into like the whole term of, yeah, we want BIPOC stories, yeah, we want stories of other marginalized groups, we want all this inclusivity, but there isn't any. The thing is, it's just the training is where it starts. And so, and that goes back to even further before college and university level training, but that is where we got to start if we really truly want to create a progressive environment. Because as we know, and I bet y'all agree with me, but like inclusive stories is what truly creates an inclusive environment. Art imitates life, and then life imitates art too. And so this whole aspect of, we got to start at the training level if we want to actually create something that shows us as we are. And so this whole aspect of anti-racist training in not just in Department of Theater or whatever, but like everywhere. Of course, we're focusing on the Department of Theater because that is sometimes the most visual. But just focusing on this anti-racist training really does create a foundation for more inclusive and more better theater. And so that's really truly what, like, I know I take at it. It's like we are doing this to create a better environment, to create a better unique, not unique, but like a better unity, a united community, you know what I mean? And so it's like those are the things that I take out of this whole aspect of creating this anti-racist training, or and developing that into our community and into our department. It's just to create these foundations that will empower and actually change.
Yeah, and I was just wanted to say, like, this foundation that you're talking about, and like everyone's been talking about creating these policy shifts that are like that could be threaded through like the organizational structure to actually create a a culture that actually is built to hold everyone, not that is you're always like constantly working against that this like just going back to the white supremacy culture that was founded these institutions. Larissa Fasthorse says this great thing, who is a playwright and an advocate, that the foundation that this country was built on is rotten, and we have to like tear it down and like rebuild something that is more stronger and more equitable. Um, Anything to respond to those questions? I just want to give Aisha and Rani and Natalia.
I just want to echo what Danny and some of the other colleagues have said. I think it's important for anti-racism training to happen just because we're always at the back of, the decision-making process, and we need to be at the forefront of it. And for so long, like, I feel like maybe faculty and our other peers have, like, maybe wanted to deal with the problem when we get there, but it's us that's hurting most of the time. And it's important for them to go through anti-racism training in order to, avoid this hurt that we're feeling now and that that we've felt our whole lives. So yeah, just making it a priority to, think about us and our experiences and our like validation of our experiences.
Just to echo everything everyone else has said so far, but I think the biggest misconception about theater as an institution is that it is this inclusive place that welcomes all. If you want to act, there's a place for you. If you want to do this, speaking as an actor, it's like, as a brown actor too, when I get up on that stage, I cannot hide my brownness. And I can't hide that when I'm walking through the halls and when I hear people talking about, how brown are you going to make this part? How, what are you going to do with your hair? How are you going to attribute some of your culture into this? Like, can you speak with an accent? Can you, all these microaggressions, all of these things that you hear. And then you have to wonder, like, whose story am I telling when I'm telling these white people's story, when I'm, these classical playwrights? Tennessee Williams isn't the only classical playwright. Shakespeare isn't the only classical playwright that there is. And to place brown bodies into works that were written for white people does such an injustice for everybody, because then it's like, who are you representing when you tell a story and you show the community who these BIPOC actors and creators are, but they can't see themselves reflected in these stories. They can't see themselves reflected on that stage. And it's so integral that these theater institutions do the work, because then you have inclusivity instead of exclusivity, because there needs to be places for brown actors to feel welcomed. And it's not just by saying, oh, I'll give you a part, you're a diversity hire. It's by saying, here's a part that was written for someone like you in mind. You know, those things make a difference. And I get really passionate about it because it's like all my experiences are just micro experiences compared to what a lot of other people in this community have experienced as well. And I just think it's so important for people to start self-reflecting and realize, you know, theater isn't this place that was hyped up to be by so many people. It's a place that was built on white supremacy. And until that's acknowledged, then it's not going to be this inclusive, beautiful place that we want it to be. So I think that's, in order for people to start recognizing that, that's what needs to happen.
I just want to piggyback that off of that. I think a huge thing where I see is like a lot of theater departments or just companies in general, they say they want an inclusive environment. They say they want a diverse environment, and they try to put all these things. But the thing is, they aren't ready by how they are, if that makes sense. They aren't ready to have BIPOC actors. BIPOC actors. They aren't ready to have BIPOC lighting designers, scenic designers. I just had an experience with my curly hair. It's not even that curly, and I can only imagine what, you know, black actors who have curlier hair, where a hair designer who was the professor, she didn't know what to do with my hair. And so I was like, those are things that you say you want, but you're not ready. Like, what would happen the day after tomorrow if your department of theater was the percentage that you all want, where it's almost BIPOC communities there, the disabled communities there, like the queer communities there? What would happen if you had that? Is your department ready? Are you ready to actually teach the things that are needed? And the fact is that no, most of the time it's no. It's problems with the policy, problems with the syllabuses, problems with the canon that we just had in the chat, problems with the professors themselves. Like, these are all different things that it's not just one little thing that will change. But yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off with that, Ronnie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes to everything that everybody said. And then also, like, I feel like my current department is getting to where the actors are starting to look like what they're promising, but then you're not creating the environment in which they can thrive, in which they feel like they are seen, and that needs to change. And I guess that's also the reason why I fight for anti-racism structures in the institution, is because I want the theater to live up to its promise. Maybe that's naive of me, very American dream-esque or whatever. But just, if you promise to be a place that is inclusive, that sees people, that invites the weary, the poorest, the outcasts, okay, then do it. I don't know, you know, like, then do it. And I, in like the most personal way, it's like, this is the fight that I do, the work that I do for free, and with all of my heart, is how I honor the stories of the people that came before me when I entered this institution, of people that that confided in me and their pains and the things that they had gone through. My own experiences, the experiences of people in my own cohort, and I fight for them, because I know that if I fight for them, I fight for other people that come after us. And I hope for a day when people go into an institution and we don't have to have EDI work groups. We don't have to have, you know, people doing emotional labor absolutely for free. It's just, I get to go to school and I get to do the thing that I love to do. And I don't age 60 years in advance because of it. I just get to be an artist. And we're not there. But I think because of the work and the um, the sacrifice, but also the responsibility that we've taken on, I think we get closer. I think we get a little closer every day.
Yes. Oh my God. I have so many things like going through my head from like hearing you all. And well, I'll preface this by saying that I feel that I'm more on like this side than the professional side, because like I just graduated in 2019. So it's like I worked 1 year and then I didn't work for that other year. And, so I feel like I still feel very connected to like my student side, whatever that means. But I will say that, yes, what you were just saying, like the difference between what you are all doing versus what the institution has always done is that you're not waiting for something to happen. You're doing it now so that when other people like you come, it's ready, which it's like for like these institutions, it's kind of like a crazy idea. And I'll also say that it seems like education means so much to us. And I think I speak for myself, like coming from my, my history, education has kind of always been like the pushing force that will get you further in life. So it's this promise of education that like I was chasing, for example, and and it seems like we put so much value in education because it is sold to us like that you will not only get credentialing and will like get a better job and a better salary or payment, but that you will also grow as a person and as an individual. And especially following like an artist, like an art, education, it just seems kind of more like, personal growth and emotional. And so yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thank you for that also. And this, like, I think that is a great point. There is a very specific brand of education that is being sold, right? And also a very particular path that is often said to be the only one right way into the theater, which is not true. I mean, it definitely, education is important and like community building is important, but and just for my own self, I very much agree. Like I am on a constant learning journey. I'm on a collaborative learning journey, and there are many paths into any space and profession. And to be told that there's only one way to do something, especially if that place is not built for you and does not necessarily serve you and actually only serves to gatekeep even further. Could go off on that for a while, but what I'm actually going to do instead of that is transition over to a couple of super related audience or questions that have come up from our audience on Zoom and on Facebook. And I'm going to actually, there was a question from Luke and a question from Amara that are really similar. They're both about accountability. And Luke had asked if he was curious to know if there are any positive examples of what accountability has looked like at these different schools or not, and what you hope accountability might look like. And Amara, in a similar vein, had asked, like how you all have been working with your groups to hold faculty accountable and making sure they actually follow through on these demands. So like, what does accountability look like, and positive and the negative parts about that?
Can I share an experience? Sometime last year before the pandemic happened, there was a tipping point for the Ithaca theater art BIPOC community, where a lot of people, particularly performance majors, I feel felt like they weren't being heard by their faculty, their professors, and a student, Jada Boggs, and a few other people decided they had this wonderful idea of putting out papers around Dillingham, which is the theater building's first level. And it was an opportunity for people, a part of our community, where they could share experiences. And a lot of the micro and macroaggressions that were put on these pieces of paper really, like made people look at what was going on, like it was in front of their faces and it was unavoidable at that point. And it almost became like an event. People from all over the campus community, I'm talking like business, school, PT, everybody was coming to Dillingham to see these stories and to read them. And I thought, I was one of the people who had written things that happened to me, like between me and my white peers. And it was just a moment where I felt like, oh, if nobody's going to listen, at least like we have each other and we can do something like this, where if people are choosing not to listen to us, we are going to make our voices heard. And it was definitely obviously hard for a lot of people to share what happened to them. It's traumatic, but it was also a great way for me to feel like, yeah, if no one's going to listen, I will make them, you know?
Kind of a funny story or pathway to some accountability. So I've mentioned how we have not really had great accountability from our faculty or really engagement with our faculty. One of the things we advocated for from the very beginning was departmental-wide EDI training of some kind. So when we weren't getting that, when we didn't receive any kind of positive engagement from the faculty on that, we did that ourselves. We just decided to try to organize that ourselves. And just this week, we got this email from our faculty announcing that all next quarter, keep your Monday afternoons open because there's going to be faculty and student integrated EDI training every other Monday afternoon, which I think is a win, obviously, for all of us as a department. But I would say what a strange and bizarre thing to not include any students in the planning or even to let us in on, we're working on this, it's going to happen, it's taking time, we're really trying, this is. And it reminds me that perfectionism is also one of the characteristics of white supremacy culture, which is something that I see reflected in these practices of my faculty in particular, that they're so afraid for us to see them fail, or for us to see them falter, or for us to see them struggle, that they cannot, they're unwilling to let us see it until it's done or it's perfect. And what we're working towards is, like we've said so many times, you can send us an email that says, we don't know yet. That's a great email to send. I love that email, but they don't. So kind of a funny, yes, I don't know is a great answer. It's so true. But that's a funny way that I do think that accountability came from the pressure that we put on this faculty in this department, but we weren't necessarily part of the planning of that.
Yeah, I've been as an actor, I have been in my time here. I'm sure there's been more, but they haven't like been addressed or people didn't know what to do. But like 2 instances where something was said that was harmful to somebody else in the room. And both times we dealt with it with conversation. And obviously this is at a very like molecular level, very like within the classroom, but I also think that this kind of advocacy and transparency and vulnerability is radical in its own way and absolutely necessary, in tandem with work groups and bigger department organizing and all of this, because it teaches people to have difficult conversations. Sometimes people haven't even had one in their life, but it also completely takes the floor out of trying to be perfect, because no one can plan how a conversation is going to go, and no one can really grab onto anything except what's in their heart, and it sounds very esoteric, very holistic, but I think that that is the way forward, in that, somebody, saying an apology and going on with class doesn't do anybody anything. But stopping the class, having a dedicated amount of time to having a conversation on why this thing happened, why it's fucked up, what are we going to do to like make sure it doesn't happen again, and also leave space for people to talk about maybe why they didn't speak up in the moment, or what their thoughts were, or it just takes away the veil and the silence and the siloing of individuals even within a classroom. And it's like, oh, okay, now we're on the same page and we can continue. And that has been, I have felt like a very positive result of like accountability, of saying, hey, we need to talk about it. And we were only able to do that because we are blessed with some pretty great faculty that are trying their best, and they're gonna fuck up, but they're actually trying to be better people, and they know the responsibility that they're tasked with, especially if they're a white professor with a lot of BIPOC students. So, and it also, from one of the conversations, having a conversation about something that happened in the classroom opened the conversation to stuff that's happening in the world, and how another classmate didn't feel comfortable asking for space in the first place until someone had asked for space for the original incident, right? So like words are very powerful. Conversation is the most powerful, and also is action. But I think if something happens and it's a person that you can tell is trying their best, just having a conversation and really having a dialogue with somebody does miraculous things, honestly. Does miraculous things, and everyone gets better at it too, especially if you, from my own experience, I get very uncomfortable with confrontation, but the more I do it and the more uncomfortable conversations that I have, the stronger I get, and the stronger I am to advocate for myself and also the other BIPOC in the room, because I've had the practice. So I think that that is something that definitely needs to be integrated into, with work groups, absolutely, but also like inside the classrooms, and having training on how to have these difficult conversations, because they are the root of everything.
I just want to add that those conversations are essential too, and sometimes they need moderators, like official moderators, just because we usually, the people who are going through the incident, or who, usually the BIPOC students in this term, we're like burying our soul so most of the time. We have our emotions high, and then if you're basically calling your professor or another student racist, or the thing that they did was kind of racist or not comfy, then our emotions are also high. And so what I've found is that sometimes there's just either boom 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 of everything, or sometimes we backtrack off to another thing. And so sometimes moderators really are essential to make sure that the conversation is on track of things, and that we get to the bare issue of what is at hand at that circumstance, right? And I know that most of the time, I don't know how it is with y'all's universities, but like go to the diversity like group on campus, and like ask, hey, we need a moderator. We need a moderator because this is important. This is something that we know we're not going to, if we continue not with that one, it's not going to fix anything. And exactly, ask for your tuition dollars, because literally that's what they're there for. And so as much as sometimes those like personal conversations are useful and are needed, sometimes the conversations just need moderators as well, because it is high stakes, high emotions, everything like that.
Thank you. I'm actually going to pass it over to Rodrigo to set up our closing circle because it is getting to be that kind of time.
Yeah, I wanted to ask each of you to give kind of the field, the theater field, an assignment, and say, how would you like to be welcomed into the theater field once you graduate? What would you like us to do before you get here? In the same way that you're doing that for your fellow students.
We can go, why don't we go in the opposite order of how we did our introductions. Yeah, so I think that would hand it over to Ronnie. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I would say one of the biggest issues that we've noticed while trying to have these discussions is that a lot of the work the faculty relies on us to do. A lot of the research, a lot of the presentations, all of these things that we kind of had to take a step back and we realized this isn't the work that we should be doing. We're the victims here. I don't want to say victims, but we're the ones who are asking for your help, and you are in the position of power where you are more than capable of doing that. So I implore every theater institution, we do the research before reaching out, so you need to do the same, because it's not fair. It's not fair, especially you're expecting us, the ones who are suffering the trauma, the ones who are bringing this trauma up to our traumatizers, to have all the answers when, we're still students. We're still trying to get through the day. And I can't stress that enough, because they put a lot of work on us, and then that work also sidelines the work that we are trying to do. So in order for us to be prepared to have these discussions and go forward, we have to be focusing on what we need to do, and they have to do their part. So I would say that's definitely one thing. And definitely just reflect on, everyone has to reflect on their own implicit biases and internal, external, that's the most important thing, because if you are going through life thinking, I'm perfect, I've never caused anybody pain, I've never said anything wrong in my life, I'm not racist, I voted for Obama, then that's the issue. You're preventing yourself, and therefore you're preventing all of these people and all these big institutional movements from being able to progress and move forward. So yeah, unconscious bias is definitely, one of the biggest things that people don't realize, and everyone has it. So even BIPOC community members, like I had an experience last semester where we had a member of the BIPOC community who was producing one of the shows, and we had an incident with them perpetrating yellowface. And so that for me was a big turning point where I kind of realized, I can't rely on just the members of my BIPOC community unless they do their work and recognize their own biases as well. So I would say for everyone, just recognize what it is you need to work on before you start getting mad at people for telling you to your face. So that's what I have to say.
Oh yeah. Over to you, David.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. That was so much good stuff. I would repeat that it's so necessary to do some work, and reflect in this time, because I think one thing that feels very empowering is sitting through these 2 hours is we're coming, they're coming, and we're different, we're loud, and we're coming. So like Danny said, are we going to be ready or not? I think it's time for everybody to reflect, and like Ronnie said, it's for everyone needs to reflect in this moment on our proximity to privilege, because we all share a proximity to privilege. And maybe on a final note, I would say that those who have a closer proximity to privilege, a reminder that silence is violence. And I will share a very, very, very recent incident where I was in a Zoom classroom with a lot of my colleagues, and I find myself very often in this situation where I am usually, if not the only, one of very few POC in the room, speaking to my white faculty, bringing up some issue that has happened, racially related. And I got a private message in the Zoom chat from one of my white colleagues who said, "Thank you so much for speaking up. It's so great that you do this all the time. You remind me that we, you remind me that we can do this, and you make me feel safe," or whatever. And my therapist talked me through this experience, actually, because I said, "That's beautiful. Thank you." And then she was like, "Why didn't that motherfucker say something? Why are you always the one saying something?" And that's real. So just remember that when you find yourself in these spaces and your BIPOC colleagues are doing this work over and over and over again, you can support us. You can be part of this conversation. You can be more than a silent ally. You can be part of this work too.
Hell yes. I'm just gonna double amplify what you just said for like everybody. Like understanding your positional power and your agency is like just think to yourself, especially white-bodied people, how can you be an ally and an accomplice from your position of power? Just think about it. All right, now back to the order, which is, oh my gosh, who's next? I lost my little list.
I think I'm next.
Yeah, it's Aisha. Thank you.
Yeah, just again echoing what everyone said. Do some work. Don't undermine our experiences. Really listen, absorb what we're saying, reflect on it. There's so much room to grow, and I feel like that's something I'm appreciative of, is when people are willing to, hear me out and also take time alone by themselves to do the research instead of relying on our trauma to educate them. Um, and it's not a radical idea to respect people and, respect their boundaries and the skin that we literally walk in every single day. It's not a radical idea. We deserve the same respect as we give them.
Hell yeah. All right. Thank you, Aisha. And listen, that's a big one. Danny, what
I,
is your assignment?
I was gonna say listen to us, but Aisha took that from me, so I'll say my second one. Um, I think we need more BIPOC in leadership positions. It was mentioned earlier that like one of the heads was a black person, and people thought, oh yeah, all this thing about racism is gonna be gone. That's not true. That's not true. As was mentioned, Ronnie, like even BIPOC have their own things that they have to deal with. And what I mean, it's not like I'm saying that white people can't do it, but you know we need these leadership positions filled with people of color, because they are gonna be the ones that understand, that can truly speak from a position of experience, and that will propel forward, not just you know lay back and everything like that. That's what we need. I was gonna say one more thing. Um, that Oh, and like David said, we're coming. Like those positions of leadership, that's the room I'm in, the virtual room I'm in. Those are all people that you can hire, that you can go ahead and say, oh yeah, here is someone that you could hire. Here is someone that could lead this. And we've been here. We're gonna be there, and we're gonna continue to be there. So yeah.
Hell yeah. All right. And then I think just over to Natalia and Elizabeth. Yes?
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts, so I'm just gonna throw them out there. Put your money where your mouth is. Your budgets are your values.
Ugh.
So if you want to say, "Oh, I don't care," Put your money. Where is it? That one gets me mad. Theater outreach. Who is in your theaters? Big question mark there. Highlight that. I don't want to be someone of my skin color should not be the only Latinx representation in the room. WTF? What is that? Colorism is real. And overall, my big thing, the thing that I always am holding close to my heart is nuance. Nuance. It encompasses everything. I don't want to just be like, okay, this is our Latinx, actor, this is our Latinx producer, whatever. It's like I am Cuban, Colombian, Spanish. Somebody is like somebody's story is so so detailed and authentically their own, and we deserve to be seen as who we are, fully, holistically. And if that doesn't fit your budget or your pocketbook, reassess, because you're not going to be in business for much longer. Just letting you know. So I mean that's what I would say. And your season shouldn't just be like the one BIPOC show, okay? Because if we have to go into the theater and see a white show and find a universal experience within this white show, then you can find the universal experience in any freaking nuanced story that you see. You have brains too, you have a heart too. So you can do it. I believe in you. That's what I gotta say. Elizabeth, to you.
Man, I was going to say that last one too, because it's great. But I mean, we baby white audiences, right? We say Hamlet is a story that everyone can relate to, but then we don't extend this to BIPOC playwrights and BIPOC work, right? And so we need to, the audience members have brains and they can relate to people. And I think theaters need to stop questioning that. I also think this idea of diversity, you want diversity in a theater, this needs to extend past into people that the audience don't see. What are your board members? Who are your board members? Who works in administration? Who are your technicians? Who is your crew? Who's building these sets? Who are your designers? All of these things matter. It's not just about placating what audience members or this is per show. This is something that needs to be throughout your entire company. Yeah.
This is like one giant group mic drop. I'm just gonna say thank you all. Like assignments heard, just like echoing all of that. And yeah, I just want to. So there was actually like. I'd just like to close us out, and then we'll just actually like invite everyone to like turn on their video and hang out for a little bit if they want. But I got a message earlier in the salon from Amara, who I'm actually going to invite on in a moment, who is an undergraduate student at Fordham University, and they're the co-founder of the BIPOC Theater Alliance at Fordham, and they were wondering if there would be other opportunities for like theater and students who are working in EDI and anti-racism to to network outside of the salon. Hey, Mara. And I wanted to say, like, hell yes. One of the things that we did with this, and I will drop this in the chat as well, but I'm going to screen share for a hot second, is that we started to compile this resource bank that has all of these different actions and resources. It's still being filled out from all of these institutions, but other institutions as well. Look, Fordham's on there, yay. And we'll share this out to the world, and we do hope that it like grows and continues, and that this is not the last opportunity for students, current students and alumni to connect across departments, across universities, across the country. But I wanted to just invite Amara on to like speak a little bit about what y'all have been doing over at Fordham as well. You should be able to unsilence now.
Okay, I can now. Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Amara McNeil. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am currently a sophomore undergraduate student at Fordham University. And much like all of you, I was really inspired after the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many other Black and Brown people, because Fordham for a really long time has had a history of just allowing other students and faculty members to commit microaggressions and macroaggressions against BIPOC students and faculty. And it hasn't been something that students have felt comfortable enough to address. And so over the summer, we created the BIPOC Theater Alliance at Fordham. We have been meeting bi-weekly with all of the BIPOC students in our program, and we have created affinity groups. Right now we have a Black affinity group, an AAPI affinity group, and a Latinx affinity group, and we're looking to expand. We have created a list of 10 demands, which we are actively revising, and the faculty has thankfully met some of those demands. We did receive anti-racist training for the entire program, faculty, adjuncts, and students included. So that has been really amazing, but we're still working. And one of our goals is also to reach out to other students at other universities doing this work. So I would love for you to get in contact with me. I think we do have power together. And I think even if we were to create a network amongst ourselves within living and existing within these predominantly white institutions, we would be able to create so much change. I'm also a member of Design Action, which is a group of established white designers and rising BIPOC designers who are working to change Broadway and to change the theater program as a whole. And what I am calling for them to support us and to support students who are trying to make those change in institutions. So hopefully we will see something soon coming from that. But yeah, that's my little spiel.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And just like huge, immense gratitude for everybody for like giving of yourself both in this space and in your universities, and just like, solidarity and support on the ongoing work and the fight. Thank you all. Like, we are here again, we are stronger together. And I hope now that like this is a constellation, right? That like these connections are here and they are not the only ones that can be made. So just a deep, deep gratitude for your words and your work and your artistry. And I'll hand it over to Rodrigo to close us out also.
I just wanted to say thank you all. Thank you for your work and advocacy. And yeah, just echoing Kate, this is hopefully the beginning of a lot of conversations all together. And thank you.
Yeah, cool. I'm gonna pop also the link to Design Action, which in the chat as well, so folks can check out that work that is happening. It's a community of designers, predominantly folks of the global majority and some white allies, but really centering rising designers of color. So definitely check that out and stay tuned. I'm gonna stop us streaming on Facebook and yeah, what was I going to say? Oh, I'm going to stop streaming on Facebook, and then we'll just leave this space open a little bit for folks to hang